Back with another episode of Pottawattamie County Routes. Hi, I'm Todd Studer. We made it to Monday. I hope you enjoyed the weekend. Weather couldn't really make up its mind after a hot Saturday and then a cooler Sunday. So maybe back to some normal springtime weather for a change. We'll see what happens. Coming up today, we are going to bring you another political candidate interview. And this time, it is with Bryan Jack Holder. He is a candidate for District 15 for the Iowa Legislature, and it covers quite a bit of our area in Pottawattamie County. And that particular district also goes north into Harrison County. And Bryan Jack Holder, he's run for office quite a few times, and he has a little bit of a different philosophy as to his approach to campaigning. And, well, we're going to let him tell you all about that. So Bryan Jack Holder is our guest today on Pottawattamie County Routes. Service Master Restored by Schmader knows how hard it is to get back to normal when you've suffered serious property damage due to flooding, fire, or smoke. And that can often lead to mold and leave you with all sorts of questions. How do I get my home or business back to normal? Here's how you do it. You call Cindy Schmader with Service Master Restored by Schmader. Her number, 402-339-9911. And when you're in the market for stylish, locally curated fashion close to home, visit Unique Boutique Iowa. She's in Neola at 101 4th Street and is your destination for trendy clothing, accessories, and distinctive gifts. Open on the weekends and always open online at shopubiowa.com. Into a separate studio on Willow today as we are visiting with a candidate for Iowa Legislature District 15. This is Bryan Jack Holder, and thank you so much for coming in, sir.
Oh, thank you so much, Todd. I appreciate the opportunity.
Let's start with your why to begin with. I mean, what is it that made you say, I need to be on the ballot for the election this year?
I got involved in politics a little over a decade ago, and I just determined and decided that if there's an opportunity to run for office, I'm going to do it. It allows somebody to sort of elevate their voice in the political process as a candidate instead of that crazy guy on the side of the interstate with a sign. So, but well, I've done that too. Yeah. So yeah,
I've seen everything from somebody standing out there and waving their sign and the actual candidate being out there, to just yard signs, to mailers, to sitting on a program like this. And obviously, you know, my partner Kyle and I, we're kind of partial to this way of doing things,
right?
Because we feel that this is how you can most effectively reach people with what it is that you specifically want to say.
Oh, exactly. The biggest thing that I'm concerned about is the underrepresentation that so many of our communities have, where their communities in this district I'm running for is across 2 different counties, dozens of towns, and nearly 1,000 square miles of acreage that this representative represents the people in. And so I'm just advocating for smaller districts, especially not having districts cross county lines where you're not part of that political community in another town, and you shouldn't have to conduct some type of charm offensive to convince strangers to support you. They should be able to vote for their own home county candidate.
I know that, and something that I've talked about a lot, is the community feel all across Southwest Iowa, but at the same time, each one of those communities has a unique identity, and each one wants to feel like their voice is being heard. So when you start putting in a lot of them, I do see your point that going over 2 counties, there's a lot of communities out there.
Well, there is, and then even the communities in those counties are not in complete agreement on what the public policy should be or what laws should be passed in Des Moines. You've got the rural people, the farmers, and the acreage owners, and they have different interests from each other, plus the people in the city. Some of the people like the towns being small the way they are, but there's other ones that want to bring in more development dollars so they can increase the tax base and widen it out and bring in more people. But it's just difficult. You know, we live in a time where you don't need 15 kids to live on the farm to conduct the operations with the modern machinery and technology. And I'm not a social planner, so I don't know what the solution to that problem is.
So when you look at, because legislature in session right now, so as you look at what's going on over there, what stands out to you that, okay, I like this, I don't like this? Where's your approach?
In terms of the legislation, I wish our state legislature would focus on the most important things, which are the taxing and spending policies, instead of some of the more wedge issue things that they seem to focus on early in the session, and then they sort of run down the clock at the end of the session, and they're staying up all night to figure out a budget and how they're going to account for the finances. And we shouldn't be operating like that as a state.
Yeah, there's a limited amount of time that they have. It's not as if they're in session all year long.
Yeah, exactly. They run out of the per diem money, which is the money that the state gives them to have a hotel room and meals when they're up there, and that's at the end of April. And so they sometimes go past that, and then they're coming out of their own pocket to pay for those costs.
You have really have to look at this campaign in a couple of different windows, because you're starting off with a primary that's coming up on June 2nd. And if you don't come out of that, then the rest of the year doesn't matter
right.
as far as your campaign goes.
Yeah.
So are you able to think at all about later, or is it just a focus right now headed into June 2nd?
Every campaign I've been involved in, and I've run for office. This will be the 11th time. And I did win one election as a Libertarian for the U.S. House when we were a major party. And so I didn't have an opponent, so it was a Saddam Hussein primary. No one else was on the ballot. But I'm looking forward to, the two different paths, if I win the primary and if I don't. And if I don't win the primary, I'm going to support the party's nominee, and I'll run again in 2 years advocating for these smaller districts. And if I did win, I wouldn't run for re-election to the Iowa House. I would just serve one term. The Republican Party, Abraham Lincoln, when he was a Whig back in the 1840s, they had a rule. He went to Congress for 2 years, and then another member of his party went to Congress for 2 years. So there was actual rotation in the seats. And what that does is it lets the other candidates know, hey, it doesn't have to be a once-in-a-lifetime thing. You can do it again in 2 years. And I want to help our party win this seat.
You're running on the Republican ticket.
Yes, I am.
And you just mentioned before that at one point you were on the Libertarian ticket. So there had to have been a little bit of a shift in there. I'm curious about what was involved with that.
The shift was mainly a decade or so ago. 2014, I tried to run the Republican primary for U.S. House. And I just discovered it's such a hard, huge task for one person to go out and get. At the time, you needed thousands of signatures in multiple counties. And so I wasn't able to do that. So I ran as an independent. I came back to the Republican Party. And then in 2016, I ran for Iowa House and got 20% just to give people another option, and then decided to run for Congress again. I did that 4 more times. But the good thing about running as an independent Libertarian is you don't have to deal with the factionalism inside the party that you sometimes do with the major parties. There's some people that they just they come from a different socioeconomic background, and they're sort of the country club people in the party. That's what they've been called over the years, the establishment. And they sort of like things the way they are, and they don't want to have any new ideas, fresh ideas in there, because they're so invested and entrenched in the way things are. But I think it's better if you can have that primary challenger, because it allows both candidates to sort of explore the issues, and it demonstrates you don't have to be adversarial or confrontational when you're discussing these things. If you can find some common ground, I think that gives us hope that we can resolve some of these issues that you and I have been hearing about for most of our life. So
if I was advising you on how to run a campaign, personally, I think I'd lean into I'm running for one term.
Yeah,
because you're not trying to set yourself up for a second term
No.
and have to play. I mean, let's be honest, there's a game that has to be played, when it comes to party politics. And if you're saying, I'm not part of that, now, I think that could resonate with some people. It's not going to resonate with your party, though.
Right, right. Well, I think they would be happy if I did win, just because I could finally demonstrate a different way of representing people, being closer, more accessible to people. They pay the state legislators about $30,000 a year between the salary and the per diem. And whatever money I would be paid that was not used for traveling back and forth to Des Moines and traveling around the district would be returned to the taxpayers, because I don't want anything from this job except for better representation.
A lot of questions pop into my head regarding that, because you said you've run for office a lot of times. It's not free to do that. It takes money to be able to do a campaign.
In my case, it's taken time. It's taken 13 years of my life doing this, rejecting any campaign contributions, not asking people for money or votes, just doing this as a form of service. And like I said, just trying to demonstrate to people you don't have to sell out. You don't have to raise tens of thousands of dollars like in this race, or for Congress. To win a congressional seat in Iowa, you need to raise $5 to $10 million if you want to be competitive. And when I decided to run for Congress, I saw how much money it would take, and I just thought to myself, that's not a road I want to go down, and that's not the way our system of government should be set up, where it's all about how much money you spend and trying to convince complete strangers to support you when you haven't even spoken to them or even sometimes set foot in the county that they reside in.
What I'm hearing and what it sounds like is, for you, there's a bigger message and a bigger mission than just winning an election.
Well, there always has been, and it's if people are willing to sacrifice whatever benefits they may receive from the office, I think that's a very clear sign that you're keeping faith with the people, that it's about them and what they need. But as I said before, when these districts are so huge, you have a major conflict of interest between people that live in the district. So how do you balance the needs of one group of people versus the other? And I think communication is the key. But we need to have a stronger civics courses in our elementary and high school, because, I had good teachers in high school, but we didn't focus too much on exactly the mechanics of how our government is supposed to work. And it begins with seeing an issue in the public policy that you think you can help resolve as a candidate, and then getting on the ballot. That's something I didn't even learn about when I attended Creighton Law School, is how does a candidate run for Congress and get on the ballot? There's a whole set of laws called the ballot access laws, and they're all different across states. Across the river in Nebraska, a candidate for U.S. House has to pay a certain fee, a filing fee, that's a fraction of their salary, just to get on the ballot. So you haven't even won yet, and you're already got to give the state $5,000 or $6,000. Here in Iowa, we do not have that yet. It's based strictly on how many signatures you get, and there's a certain number of signatures depending on what office you're running for. But you have to get a certain number of signatures in a certain number of counties. It's almost like a form of ballot access bingo, and that that's been a great experience. I've learned so much just running for office in terms of how to get on the ballot. And I've helped other candidates get on the ballot. I haven't managed anyone else's campaigns, but I've been an assistant. I try to film as many town halls as I can. The Chamber of Commerce has these legislative coffees at Wilson, and I started filming them about 10 or 12 years ago. And then as a candidate running, I didn't have time to go down there and do that, but now I'm filming them again, and I filmed the last two that they had, and those are wonderful experiences when 50, 60 people from the public come in, and you can submit questions to your legislators, and it's about an hour-long session, and then you can talk to them afterwards. So they're very accessible. State Representative Brent Segrist has been there. State Representative John Turek has been there, and so has State Senator Dan Dawson. And so that's what I love about being part of this community in this town is that you meet people. There may be in a different party, a different political faction, but we can still talk, and that's the key. If we can keep the lines of communication open, then I think there's so much greater things we can accomplish.
You can still talk, but how often do we actually see that in public? Now, in private, here's what I have witnessed just for myself, because I've talked with a lot of different political candidates.
Yeah.
I think they're getting along a whole lot more than the press would have us believe.
Oh, definitely. I think some of it is the kabuki theater, where it's all-star wrestling. I've heard people make a comparison to that, but they and when they go up to the legislature, they go into these caucus rooms, and we don't know what they're saying inside there. And there's some people that are proposing that we eliminate the private caucusing of the Republican and Democrat Party members when they're up there. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that needs to be discussed. It may be a good thing. And I don't know if I was elected how they would treat me up there. Hopefully they would treat me respectfully, because we're basically delegates to the central government of our state. And, we're all supposed to have an equal opportunity to talk and discuss things. But there's a lot that goes on. I guess this session there were about 2,000 bills that were presented, and I think about 200 of them will end up becoming law. But it's a question of what gets put to the front of the pile of bills, and we have a system of government now with these two parties where it's the party leadership that manage the bills. And so oftentimes if you're just a new member or a rank and file member, I'm not saying you're going to get exiled to Alaska, but you may get a committee that isn't very interesting or exciting. And, there were some state senators that were removed from committees this session because they had voted in favor of the private property owners' rights with the carbon capture pipeline. So even within the Republican Party of Iowa, there's still some factionalism going on.
Yeah, that pipeline was a big deal. And for folks in Pottawattamie County out on the eastern side of the county where that pipeline was actually going through, a lot of pushback that we saw on that. I personally, I'm not involved enough in it to really understand, to be able to formulate a strong opinion one way or another, but it's something that's pretty high on everybody's radar, I think.
Oh, that along with the wind farms too. That's been a highly controversial development over the last 15 or 20 years. I've got a friend that moved out to Adair on his dream farm, and his neighbor put in a wind farm from Midwest Energy, and they he had the flicker and the noise, and he had to sell it because it was basically a nuisance right next door to him. But that's something. If you saw the tornado footage from a couple of years ago and what it did to the greenfield and the wind farms, so I've looked at it. There's people that say that these technologies are not sustainable, they're not renewable. But we're a power-hungry nation in terms of energy. We need to keep our grid alive and functional. And, there's some people that propose nuclear, other forms of providing electricity. But, here we've got the railroads bringing coal in to the coal-fired power plants. But I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, you were talking about the different forms of energy that are out there right now, and we've got a lot of different options. I know the wind farms and the turbines that are out there. It seemed to me that initially there was a lot of support for it, but that has waned quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I know I have a friend that lives up in northwest Iowa that has fought tooth and nail to keep those out, because mainly just because visually
Right.
that it takes out. And I've heard about the stories of people actually having some issues in that constant. It's not quiet.
No.
and,
Oh, no. No.
and I wonder. And again, this is me having an opinion, which I seldom do on publicly, but I wonder how often those are going up on property that the property owner lives there.
Right. Yeah. Some of them may be more of the absentee landlord type
Yes.
situations. One other thing I was going to say, the solar too. That may be a possibility in certain areas of the country, but if you get hailstorms, you can lose your entire solar array in one 5-minute span of time. And all that, infrastructure created, all those panels smashed to pieces. And that's just, another situation you face here.
Yeah, we do have certain weather restrictions that keep us, and I know that's why wind was such a popular option. But you head east, headed towards Des Moines, and it is everywhere.
Yeah.
And if you drive it at night,
oh, you see the lights.
Then the lights are all synchronized, so they're all blinking at the same time, and it's incredibly distracting.
Oh, it is
when you're driving.
It is, yeah, especially on I-80 there. I've encountered it myself. One thing that I've heard, I haven't done a deep dive into it, but for the cost of the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War, that money could have put a solar array and a little windmill on every private home in America. Wow. to make the individual home sort of energy independent. And, you just think about how much money is being spent on the wars and what the return on our investment is, whether it makes us any safer here, more prosperous, more peaceful.
Yeah, there's a lot of things which is why I don't run for office.
Oh yeah,
because I'm qualified enough to sit and have a conversation about it, but I'm not qualified enough to be able to make a decision about that.
You're more than qualified.
Well, I appreciate that.
No, you're welcome.
It's so as you are out there and you're talking to people, and you're walking up, shaking in, hey, I'm Bryan Jack Holder, and I'm running for Iowa Legislature District 15. Yeah. What are those conversations like, and what kind of feedback are you getting?
Yeah. Well, first of all, a lot of people don't even know which House district that they live in or who their current state representative is. So I try to start from the position that they may not know that information. So I want to give that to them initially. I typically always carry my map of the district around with me. I had somebody ask me if I was Lewis or if I was Clark, and I said I'm neither one. But so just explaining the district. There's people out there that I've met that are supporting the other candidates, and I think that's wonderful. And then I've met people that are in the Harrison County that are going to support me. And it almost makes me feel a little bit guilty that somebody that lives up there that's closer to these other candidates in physical proximity would vote for them. But I guess that's the nature of politics, that people are going to have their preferences. But the property taxes, especially for the people that are on a fixed income and retired, because they just keep seeing the assessments increase. And some of them are wondering if they're even going to be able to keep their family homestead because the utilities are not going down. Some people, I'll say my father, for instance, he had his homeowner's insurance policy canceled because we've had hailstorms and hail damage in the last 5 years several times. And so if you can't insure your homestead and you can't pay the taxes, that's a problem, especially when you paid off the mortgage. The bank's been reimbursed for the loan. So I like the idea that those that are retired, paid off their mortgage, their property should go off of the tax rolls until it's put up for sale again.
So I see what you're saying. So if someone has paid the property off, but they still live there,
Yes.
kind of thing.
Yeah, it's their primary residence,
Yeah.
so it's not going to it's going to reward those individual homeowners that they don't have 10 different homes generating passive investment revenue. It's the place where they live, and it's their only place.
What is your opinion about that investment property? Because we've seen a lot of that. I live in Council Bluffs, so we've seen a lot of that here, that investors purchase and then rent these properties out. And we don't see a lot of homes for sale, not to the level that we used to,
Right.
In this particular area. So I'm just curious where your thoughts are.
I think if we had a better economy, more people could purchase a home outright and not have to be perpetual renters. That, and then if people are buying the homes, well, then they're not going to be using them as an investment. The sort of the slumlord thing where they're, sometimes exploiting lower income people that are sort of stuck in a situation in life and they can't move anywhere else, but they can barely afford to pay their rent.
Yeah, there's a lot of cases, I think, like that. And what, you talk about property value going up, and as the availability of places to purchase or to rent has shrunk down to such a low number, that in the market drives the rent up, and now people who are just getting by aren't getting by anymore.
Right. And there's a growing trend among some of us that we're living with 3 generations under the same home, which is traditionally how our families were structured. Grandma would be there, and then the parents and the grandkids. And if you have a large enough home and a caring enough family, that I think it's a good way to live. It's the way that I've lived, the way my parents and grandparents lived, because you have that connection to those other generations, and then there's usually somebody always home. So you're getting a full use of the home. So many of us, when we start out, you get married, you get the house, the husband and wife go to separate places to work, the kids go to school, and there's no one getting to use the home. And if you can utilize that space and make the most of it, and you don't have to keep up with the Joneses, you can sort of help split the bills. And there's, sort of, I would call it old traditional. Some people would say they're non-traditional way of living 3 generations under one roof, but it's sort of the way our society is structured. So
with a lot of that, though, is that giving people an option for that kind of lifestyle, is that something that can be helped in Des Moines? Can those legislatures do that?
That would be something that you'd have to pass a state law that incentivizes that type of structuring of your family residence and how people live there. Being involved in politics, not being an elected official, you see things differently when you're always kept on the outside and you're not in the smoke-filled room making the decisions. But we have the right to participate in that. There's something that I've been focusing on and accentuating in my campaign is Section 20 of the Iowa Constitution of the Bill of Rights. And it basically says we have a right to counsel together for the common good, and we have the right to make known our opinions to our elected representatives. And these are positive fundamental rights as Iowans. And I hope that more candidates and more elected officials embrace this Section 20, this Article 20, because, if we can't talk to each other, that sort of leaves a limit on what can be done. If you're no longer willing to talk with your representatives and your government officials, that's not a good thing.
Well, he is Bryan Jack Holder. He is running for Iowa Legislature District 15, covers a piece of Council Bluffs, heads north through the rest of Pottawattamie County going north, and picks up a lot of Harrison County. I know that you're a busy man. You took time to come in and talk with us today. Very grateful for that, and wish you the absolute best as you head in towards the primaries.
Well, thank you, Todd. I appreciate this opportunity. I really thank you for what you do for the community, communicating, letting everyone know what goes on, and it's like having a major television network here, right in my hometown. So
I'll take that compliment and won't tell you that you're over exaggerating, but I do appreciate that.
You're
and
welcome.
thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Todd. Have a great day.
If you're looking for all natural health solutions in Southwest Iowa, visit Bambi's Green Acres Natural Market. She is my go-to for supplements, vitamins, essential oils, herbal remedies. Bambi has been helping folks out for over 3 decades, and you'll find her shop in Council Bluffs on South Main Street, 805 South Main Street to be exact. And you can even explore your wellness options online at bambisgreenacres.com. Bambi's Green Acres Natural Market, putting health in your hands. And if you have a leak, a clogged drain, or even if you're planning a big remodel, Waldstein Plumbing has you covered with fast, reliable service and expert craftsmanship, handling everything from small repairs to major installations. Residential or commercial, big or small, when plumbing problems strike. Get a hold of Waldstein Plumbing at waldsteinplumbing.com. Don't forget, the primary is coming up on June 2nd, and this is your first opportunity to vote this year. This primary decides who's going to be on the general election ballot that will be in November. So if you want to have a say in that, and you really do, get it on your calendar, June 2nd. That is the day that you want to vote. I know early voting starts earlier than that. So, we need to get more people to the polls for the primaries because they're just as important. It helps us decide what 2 candidates we're going to get to vote for, and sometimes more than that on independents or maybe the Libertarian candidate, as Bryan was talking about, and different parties there. But we need to get out and vote, and again, that's coming up on June 2nd. That's going to wrap up today's show. My name's Todd Studer, and we'll see you back here tomorrow morning.